Good afternoon / evening, wherever you are in the world. I am Doug Zanger, editor-in-chief of Indie Agency News. Thanks so much for joining us today. This is one of the this is like poor grammar. It's the end of the week. We're all tired. Let's be honest. This was one of my favorite things to do when I was at the Drum and when I was at Adweek. It was to talk about the work, to talk to creatives and the people behind the work, including strategists, including media folk. And, you know, I enjoyed speaking to all agencies, but I particularly loved speaking to independent agencies. Ergo, why we're here today, Indie Work Live. If you go to LinkedIn, which is our main shtick in social, if you use the old hashtag, if you are so inclined to still be using hashtags, I encourage you to get two of them, Indie Work and Indies Work. You see what I did there? A little double meaning. Indies do the work. Indies work well. Indies work hard. And they do great things for brands, including our agency here today. And I'm going to pop this up because I want to give Tim Nudd all of the credit on this one. This was great. So this came from our friend Tim Nudd. We're talking about BJ's Wholesale Warehouse. We actually don't have those out in the Pacific Northwest, or we might, but I don't know where they are. So, but Tim Nudd wrote about this campaign. It was an editor's pick. Whenever Tim writes about something, there's always good reason for it. And I sunk into this a little bit. And I just said, I got to learn more about that. So I'm bringing in today Todd, Condi, creative director, Terri, and Sandy. Brother man, thank you so. Yeah. It's always nice when Tim gives you the seal of approval. Now, my question before we get started, before I show the work, what other stuff have you had covered from Nudd over the years? Do you remember?
Oh, not as much. We had some Gold Bond work that we did a couple years ago.
Okay.
That we got some good Tim Nudd love from. Actually, same director. Interesting.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes. And the director is Nali. I'm going to so butcher the name.
We both are. Sjöblad, I believe.
Sjöblad.
Yeah.
Swedish?
Yeah. Finnish.
Suomi. Wow. Based in LA?
Based in Helsinki.
Based in Suomi.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Based in Helsinki, but he shoots everywhere. I've shot with him a couple times, actually. He's becoming a personal favorite.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. That's another show for another day. All right. So Tim was singing the praises of this. I understand why. I'm going to play this first spot, this first 30, and then we're going to get into it.
Hey, man.
Hey, man.
I think you're leaking gas.
Gas? Reminds me, did you hear about the everyday low gas prices at BJ's Wholesale Club?
I mean, gas prices are so high these days.
And they just keep getting higher and higher. Well, that's why I switched to BJ's.
BJ's, absurdly sinful savings.
You know, comedy and humor, we know that it can be a couple of things. Number one, there ain't as much of it. Secondly, B, not always easy to pull off. There's varying degrees of it. I would say universally, someone would look at that and go, that's really good. So well done on that one. So
Thanks.
let's talk about, and we'll play obviously a couple more 30s, and then we got a few 15s that we're going to play as well. What were the key elements that you wanted to get in the forefront with just overall with this work? And because it's, number one, really tough category, retail. Number two, really hard to break through. But why don't you go ahead and break it down for us a little bit?
Well, I think you said it right there, that it's really tough to break through. That a lot of retail is inside of store. It's showing products, it's showing numbers, it's showing prices. We just didn't want to do that. Our client didn't want to do that. They wanted to. They've always liked humor. which to their credit, we see a lot less of it these days. They'd always loved humor, and when they came to us originally, they were like, we want to push the humor so that the humor is what cuts through, not even just the amount of the deal, but we want people to remember who we are and like who we are, and then gravitate to our low prices. So really, we wanted BJ's to stand out because it stood for something visceral, something emotional, something a humorous reaction, as opposed to just a logical reaction to that your pocketbook would love.
Yeah, and that's what's really interesting. Not to be all name droppy here, and if you are with us live and you have some questions, feel free to put them in the comments, and we'll do our best to answer them. But not to be all name droppy, but Neil French years ago once told me that one of the most undervalued and underrated aspects of any advertising is likability, and it can be a very tough line to navigate. Because
I think
you come across boorish. Yeah, go ahead.
I think likability is vastly underrated nowadays. People want to feel good about the brands they buy, and that's not just about doing good for the world. It's does this brand elicit any emotion in me when I think about it? It's not just, is it a good deal? Is it a good product? I mean, that's selling the qualities of your product predates advertising, but advertising was about not just selling what you are, but who you are. And so having a brand that recognized that and decided that, hey, we want to have a personality. We want BJ's to be a personality, not just a thing, not just a product that we're selling. That was really important to us.
Yep. Let's move on to the second 30 here.
Morning.
Good news or bad news?
Oh, it's great news. We're getting a BJ's Wholesale Club.
That's the Wholesale Club with up to 25% off grocery store prices.
Not to mention aisles and aisles of fresh produce.
Grocery prices were killing me.
Oh, that's not the only thing.
Wait, what?
Ooh.
What does ooh mean?
BJ's Wholesale Club. Absurdly simple savings.
I'm a big fan of the wait, what? Now, did you let the talent fly on this a little bit? Did you give them alts, or did you let them ad lib a little bit?
Yeah, we did. The ad libbing is huge. Of course, you want to get it as scripted, and you're trying. You rewrite these things 1,000 times to try to get them as funny as possible. Then you get in the room, and it sounds different to your ear. So at some point, you have to let them go. And having talent that can do that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, very helpful. Talent casting is incredibly important. Let's move into the brief, because this is one of the nuts and bolts issues that comes up in a lot of creative work. Is the client really briefing in the agency particularly well, or what needs to happen, what needs to change? So let's walk through this brief, share what you are comfortable sharing, talk about what the brief was, how you approached it at first and how it evolved over time, and also how you interrogated the brief.
That's okay. There's a lot in there to unpack.
Well, I know it's like there's 47 questions in one. You pick what you want.
All right. Well, I mean, the brief goes all the way back to kind of the beginning of last year, 2022, and inflation was running rampant, as everybody in the world knows. Food companies and grocery retailers in particular were really taking it hard as inflation was rising and government benefits associated with COVID were ending. A lot of households were getting squeezed. So a lot of people were shifting from traditional grocery to Walmart or to dollar stores. BJ's saw an opportunity to keep current members and remind them how much they were getting for their annual membership fee. They're a bit like a Costco or Sam's Club. But they also saw an opportunity to kind of steal share from traditional grocery stores and get consumers to come to us instead of Walmart. So the original brief was that, like, remind people how much money they can save at a BJ's. And specifically, it was groceries and gas to begin with. We branched out there. But okay, let's talk about how do we could literally just do the traditional thing where we show our aisles and aisles of produce and just talk about how much the savings could be as we have money raining down the screen. But they really, really wanted to do comedy. Now, comedy is the broadest thing in the world. So what we did is we said, hey, help us out. What kind of comedy do you like? What kind of comedy are you leaning towards? And the clients looked at us and said, Deadpool. And that
What?
was cracked up. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, that's where we're going with this. This is a dream come true. I mean, as is obvious, we can't get Deadpool on network TV.
No, I know.
He got the brief, and you know, the very first piece of creative we wrote for them was a radio spot where we had these two skydivers falling, and as they passed 25,000 feet, that reminds one of them about the 25% you can save off groceries at BJ's, and they just get so distracted that they don't pull their shoes. And at the end, you end the spot with these two very macabre, visceral thuds as they strike the ground. And we brought it to the client, and we were like, all right, we're either getting fired or we're going back and rebriefing. And they just cracked up. They were like, that's it. That's amazing. And so, you know, adding a little bit of death into some of our spots, running gag. But these clients were fantastic. I've always said that good work comes not just from good creatives, but good work comes from great clients.
Yep.
And when we were talking about the brief, they had the notion, they had let's lean into how much the savings can be, obviously, but then they also had a very clear vision and a bold vision for how far they wanted to push it.
We'll get to selling in work a little bit later, but let's do this. Let me play the third 30, and then I want to ask you this question, and it is based on the brief, and we'll be right back after this 30.
Speak, spirit, in the name of your wife of 25 years. Speak. 25. 25.
25.
Harold?
Did you know you could save up to 25% off grocery store prices at BJ's Wholesale Club?
Up to a quarter off grocery store prices at BJ's?
That's what I said, Daphne.
That attitude right there is why I poisoned your soup.
What?
BJ's, absurdly simple savings.
Once again, a little bit of death in there.
Yeah, and I won't say that she reminded me of certain family members. The wife,
wise, very wise,
you know, but you know, mainly the accent. Let's go back to the brief, because again, I think as an agency, if you're being briefed in and you want to do right by the client, and part of doing right by the client is pushing back. And you've been at Terri and Sandy for 13 years. You're employee number one.
Since the beginning.
Since the beginning. And, and like a lot of people in this industry, you've seen a lot of things. And this is more for, maybe it's people not as experienced. Maybe they're younger. What would you say, number one, we'll go back to interrogating the brief, but then secondly, how do you go back to a client or a GCD or or go to a group account director or a GAD? Like, how do you navigate that to say, you know what, I think we need to do it this way, and we need to talk to the client about this? How do you do that during the process? So from first briefing into the process.
Oh, there's a lot to unpack in that too. I think Terri and Sandy as an agency is very unique in that, like, above the CD level, there are only Terri and Sandy, the two women with their name on the door. So they function essentially as ECDs. And I think that over 13 years, I've really come to know their taste. I not that I have to tailor everything I do to them. I've also built a relationship enough where I can push back on them. My partner, Mike, who wasn't able to be with us today, he does everything with me. Mike Cicali and I, we know how to work with Terri and Sandy to get work that they're going to like. We know when to push. And I think that that's one thing that I tell a lot of junior creatives is, before you sell it to the client, you've got to sell it to every chain, to every state. And part of that is just, one, getting to know that person as much as you can, getting to know their tastes, getting to know what they like, getting to know what they've done. I mean, if you take a new job and you haven't looked at the book of the person you're going to work with, what are you doing? And then once you're beyond that, once you understand who they are, help them understand who you are, and you start to create a rapport. The longer that you work with somebody, the more that you can wow them every day, the more that they're going to grow to trust you. And I think that that's something that we've done really well with our BJ's client is, at first they didn't know me and Mike from Adam, But every single meeting, we built that relationship of trust by delivering, by over delivering, and by working hand in hand at every step. If they ever felt uncomfortable, well, okay, let's have a call, just creatives and client, and we have a wonderful account team that gives us some latitude to do that. Hey, sometimes we just need to put process aside and let's just chat. Let's be human. Let's go to lunch.
Right.
And the more that you can build those relationships, the more that they can trust you, the more you can push back.
Yeah.
It's not just great work that's going to change their minds. It's a great relationship that is going to change their mind.
Yep. That makes 100% sense. Let's take a look at the first 15.
Local man survives a 25-story fall.
Enough about that. Let's talk about how you can save up to 25% off grocery store prices at BJ's Wholesale Club.
This is a miracle, Tom.
I think a miracle's pushing it.
Now that device has been done, like the breaking news thing has been done before. How did I don't want to say like it can be a throwaway, right? Because that's not the case. But the device has been used before. Talk about some of the discussions that you had about like, okay, seen it a million times, but how do we make it a little bit different? Because it works. Like this is like these types of spots when devices are used over and over again, I believe that there's a familiarity, which is not a bad thing at all. But where it gets interesting is you have to be real good to make that device work.
Well, hopefully we did.
You did. Yeah, it was really good.
I mean, some of how we got there was, again, brief. So we had, of course, the TV spots for the first 3 you showed, but they also had a whole online video buy that they needed to fill. And we didn't have as much money for that. So you're starting to look for, okay, what are things that I can film multiple of in one location? And that starts narrowing down, the tropes that you can use. That starts narrowing down the sets you can use, the number of actors. So we've ended up with the newscast based on our need to create a ton of content very inexpensively. And honestly, we shot 11 of those in a day. Trying to save some money for our cost conscious clients. And I think that the trope can go south really quickly, but it fit the campaign. And what I mean by that is in the campaign, it's not just dark humor. It's always that we begin over here and we get derailed to over here. Mm-hmm. And the newscasters allowed us to do that. They allowed us to start with a story over here and move to over here with a trigger word, with some visual or some audible word that's like, hey, reminds me BJ's. Mm-hmm. And I think because it fit the campaign so well, and because we were again allowed to do some darker humor than most clients would allow, the local man falls 25 stories, and we were, because of that, I think that it doesn't get trite. I hope it doesn't get trite.
No, and 15s are hard, and it's just, but there's a density to it, and it's just like, oh, I got the joke. And the fact that if you did 11 of those, that's better than seeing the same one over and over and over and over again on YouTube. Let's take a look at number 2.
Victims of the pyramid scheme are now hoping for a fresh start.
Boring. I'll tell you what's fresh. BJ's Wholesale Club with their tons of fresh produce.
You cannot be comparing financial fraud with produce. Your attitude is fresh.
Tomato.
Were they improvers?
They were, and that was specific. That was when we went out. So all of the spots we shot actually in Bulgaria, including those. And all of our talent came from the UK, with the exception of those 2. For those 2, we were like, you know what, we've got to cast New York or LA, and we have to do improv talent. Just the number that we're shooting and the nature of their relationship. It's got to be two people who can act like they've known each other and hated each other a very long time. So for those 2 specifically, we just went to we cast here in New York City and looked specifically at actors with a lot of improv experience.
I love it. What did you learn about the process? And again, you've been doing this for a very long time, but I've always believed that even if you've done something over and over and over again, you're going to learn something in every project. In this campaign and in this work, whether it was the 30s or the 15s, what are some of the things that you learned along the way this time?
Some things I learned along the way. to continually push ourselves, and that's again a very trite answer, but we made the first spots we ever made in this campaign, we made in 2022 with Matt Lenski, a really fantastic director. We love the spots a lot, but they tended towards a little bit of punny humor. There were a lot of wordplay, which as a writer I love, but when it came around to this new body of work, which was really blowing out the campaign, we went back and said, hey, do we really want to do that? Terri and Sandy pushed me and Mike and said, do you really want to do that? Is that really what you want to hang your hat on? And we really feel like this wave of creative is more, the humor is born more out of the situation. It's born more out of the characters. It's not just punny wordplay. So I feel like our two bosses held us accountable, and we held ourselves accountable, and we held our teams accountable to push it beyond what it could have been. I mean, the first few scripts that came in on this round were chock full of puns. But I think we finally got there by sheer brute force of trying new things.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. Let's take a look at the third.
Witnesses saw a bear climb through a big opening.
Speaking of big openings, we're getting a BJ's Wholesale Club. Hot dog.
This is really inappropriate. People need to know this thing is out there.
Heck yeah, they do. Up to 25% off grocery store prices.
That actor is so perfect. If you look at his IMDb, he's played a newscaster more than once. We only figured that out after we cast him. We're like, oh, but he's perfect.
Oh my God. Yeah, nothing more to add on that comment. Now, the trick in a lot of this, so a couple of things. The work that you've done for this brand has been effective. It's been working, right?
Yeah.
So
opening new stores, we started having to run ads for new BJ's.
I know, which is a great problem to have for any brand, especially retail. Let's talk about how you envision, and it is hard to prognosticate too much, but in your mind, based upon the work that you've done thus far, based upon the work that you're doing now, where do you believe you can go to keep it unique, to keep it fresh, and to keep it impactful for the brand?
I think one of the benefits of this campaign is that every scenario is new. You know, a balloon shop versus a seance, they're very, very different. So I feel like this campaign isn't going to get stale anytime soon. No one's going to tire of seeing it because it's going to be entirely new every time. The real challenge is going to be finding those scenarios. And, you know, to get to the few that we shot, we probably wrote dozens and dozens and dozens of scripts, if not in the triple digits. So I'm a little scared for the next round, but I'm really excited because I think that I couldn't have imagined where we ended up based on where we started.
All right, give me a little teaser. What didn't make it in? What was a concept or a joke? Do you remember one that you really liked?
Off the top of my head, I'm trying.
And if not, that's fine. I can stall for time.
That's my client that I think they bought all of our favorites. Which is just never happens. It just never happens. I mean, we bring in 630s and they're like, great, this is fantastic, run them. And it's not that they don't push us when they need to, but really, this is a fun example of all of the pieces aligning, and we really got to put our favorites on screen.
Who from the BJ's team do you want to give a shout out to? Who on the client side do you want to give a shout out to?
Oh, that's a great question. Our day-to-day client is Keith Evans, who's a former agency guy, and he's
okay.
VP of marketing Donna Noah, and Caitlin Hannon, of course, Sarah Russell. But really, Keith is our day-to-day kind of creative. He's the one who keeps us honest and works really hard to sell the work internally.
Yeah.
And even the CEO, of the company, was personally involved with reviewing the work.
That's amazing.
It is fantastic when something as dark as what we've done, went up to him. He was fully supportive and challenged his team to never dumb it down. And
that's great.
So from the top on down, just really solid.
I love it. Last question we always end on. and this is the advice section of it. And we touched on this a little bit, but, and it could be BJ's, it could be other clients as well. What advice would you give to other indies about selling in big work? What's the best advice that you can give? And a lot of this is for younger or newer talent in the industry, but at the same time, you know, you can still teach gray-haired dogs new tricks.
I think that what I always tell the incoming creatives is that it takes time. And what I mean by that is sometimes you join a client and creatively they're at a 5. They're not at 10, maybe they're at a 5. And our job immediately is to get them to a 7. Like, they're not going to jump from a 5 to a 10. Let's get them to a 7, and then we'll get them from a 7 to an 8 to a 9. I think selling good work is much more about building relationships than it is a single moment in a room. You know, you look at Mad Men, and Don Draper goes in and he has this big presentation and he wows them all, and of course they can't help but buy that idea. And in my experience, what it's been is you build a relationship to the point where they're willing to take the leap off the cliff with you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That makes a lot of sense, and sounds like a great client to work with. So congratulations. Excellent work. Again, catch the editor's pick over at Ad Age, our good friend. And, well, I mean, I guess he was a mentor of mine and still is a mentor of mine, Tim Nudd. Todd Condy from Terri and Sandy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We'll get you back on another time. So
Thanks
let us know when we got more work coming out. And to all of you out there today, thanks so much for joining us.